if I had a total loss at a rental and my tenants have to go live somewhere, uh, is there coverage for something like that under my rental policy?
A rental property, a landlord policy, dwelling fire policy, is going to have what's called, it's called a couple of different things. There's fair rental value, there's rental replacement, there's a couple of different things, but that is basically intended for the landlord if that property becomes uninhabitable due to a covered peril. Now, that can't be, unfortunately, for the people who lost power and the tenant was in there freezing. Unfortunately, that's not a covered peril. So if the tenant moves out because of that, sorry to say that's not something that the insurance will
But
pay
if
for.
if they moved out after a pipe burst, that's different.
Yeah,
Okay.
so that is basically going to give money back to the landlord for if they were charging $1,500 a month rent and the tenant had to be out for 2 weeks, they could be reimbursed $750, whatever that net amount is. Now, that's going to be up to the landlord. I would hope the landlord would refund that to the tenant, say, hey, I'm not going to make you pay rent when you couldn't live here. I don't, that now we're getting outside of my area of expertise on what the contractual lease is between the two. But this goes back to why if you are a landlord and you don't require your tenants to have renter's insurance, you're not doing it right.
That's
Right.
That's
That's where I was going to throw that in there. Is that you see a lot of people? Hey, I require renter's insurance, and this is the reason.
This is one of the reasons. Really, when you get right down to it, really the main reason is for liability purposes. You want to make sure that if something happens, somebody gets injured at your rental property, that the tenant's liability is picked up primary before they come after you as the landlord. It could be a thing where they've got a skateboard sitting out in the middle of the floor and somebody slips and falls. Well, you as a landlord, that's not really your responsibility. That's not really your fault that happened. But what if you're not a heartless person? You say, yeah, you can have dogs, just no pit bulls, Rottweilers, Dobermans, Chows, the vicious breeds. But they've got a golden retriever, and that golden retriever bites somebody, and that person is injured. Well, yes, they're going to go after the tenant, but you as the landlord allowed them to have that dog there. So, yes, they can go after you. So it's really primary is the liability. You can't move into an apartment complex probably anywhere without having renter's insurance. Again, it's for the liability purpose primarily. But as a landlord, you spin that on, look, if what happened in February of 2021 happens again and your furniture, your electronics, anything, your personal belongings are destroyed, that's not my responsibility as the landlord. You've got to protect your personal property. Also, if you have to move out because you have to go stay at a hotel, your renter's insurance will have loss of use, same as a homeowner's policy. You'll have some loss of use coverage so that you have those temporary living expenses to go stay at a hotel or whatever. So that's, again, those are reasons how you spin it as a landlord, so that they're protected, but it's really so you are protected for liability purposes, because that can be a huge hit. We always tell people, no on swimming pools, no on trampolines, because those are liability hazards. And if you're allowing tenants to have those, you're opening yourself up
already
to a
open, yeah.
liability exposure.
Yeah, it's and do you, just for a side note, do you do renter's insurance?
Sure.
So if you write my landlord policy, I can refer my clients to you and be like, hey, call Lee. He's got the
Absolutely. And a lot of apartment complexes require their tenants they want to be listed as like an additional interest on the policy. It's more so that they're notified if that policy cancels for non-payment. So yes, you can say to your tenant, I want to see proof that you have renter's insurance. Yes, here's my policy. You don't know that that's in force or not.
Mm-hmm.
They may have just paid for 1 month and then canceled it. But if your name is listed as an additional interest on the policy, then if that cancels, you're notified. So a landlord can either request or require their tenants to list them as an additional interest on the policy.
So just like your mortgage company on your primary residence, right? Just like your mortgage company would be listed as the additional interest or additional insured.
Well, it's not really an additional insured, it's an additional interest.
Good
Because the insured
clarification.
is really the person who has the main interest in the property.
Right. So it's additional interest. So just like the mortgage company is listed as the additional interest, you as the landlord would be listed as the additional interest. So that
Yeah, and a
you're
lot of
covered.
times property managers, a lot of investors will have property managers and they request to be listed on there. A lot of too is because they're going to be on site and they want to make sure, again, that
They're
liability
covered.
of them being on site is covered as well. So again, it's not a problem to add. There's generally not a cost to add an additional interest on a policy. So there's probably no reason not to do it.
The reason I brought this up is because I was talking to clients, and there were some last week that they didn't have renters insurance, and so I ended up giving them the FEMA website, and I was like, here's a FEMA website, and they're like, oh, well, I don't apply. I was like, listen, it's not for you. Give it to your tenants so they can have money if they need it. And listen, because you need a happy tenant at the end of the day, right? They're taking care of your stuff. They also have to pay you.
Right.
So I was like, hey, just here's that for them.